Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Katherine.Kelly. And in honor of both my book launch for Anxiety Treating Body, Mind, and Soul and National Mental Health Awareness Month, which is the entire month of May, I want to give you a protocol that I teach people about how to catch themselves with anxious responses. Because, one of the things that happens is that anxiety kind of yanks us down the path of emotion before we can even stop long enough to intervene and do something differently. Now, before I go into the protocol, I want to talk a little bit about how anxiety is related to the soul. So, part of this, for those of you who watch my videos and hear what I say, I talk a lot about evolution. And evolution is basically about changing behavior, changing thoughts, changing our patterns, changing our habits. It's not until we choose as humans to evolve beyond responses that we actually evolve as souls as well. And so we have so many soul wounds that are accumulated along our lifetime and lifetimes that a lot of times they pile up in a way that create these responses and create these habitual patterns that get away from us. So especially with anxiety is something that, again, nobody, they still don't know how to isolate the quote gene that is in our body that is related to anxiety. They can't figure that out. They can't figure it out for depression. They just know that it's part of our system. Now, to me, this is where the soul comes in, because I'm not sure they will ever isolate the actual gene, because I know so much of this is soul based. I know so much of this is energetic. I know so much of this comes from our wounds that I'm not really sure they're ever going to find an actual gene, a biological gene that carries all of the anxiety. So this is why it is so important to think about the human condition, the psyche part of us, and the soul part of us, because we can not only heal mental health concerns, most mental health concerns, through our evolution and through working through this stuff, but we can evolve as souls as a response. And to me, it is super important. Now, I joke with people all the time that we've got to get it figured out in one lifetime or this lifetime, because we don't want to take our stuff into the next lifetime. But when it comes to anxiety, if our soul has an energetic impression of anxiety, we're going to carry it into the next lifetime. So I want to talk a little bit more about this whole soul thing, because it's so important to get. So, when we have soul wounds, we have energetic imprints that are left on our soul. So, yes, they're left on our energetic system. Our energetic field can get energized or overactivated, and that's part of the soul condition. But we can also just get these mindsets. We can start to create these beliefs in our mind that something terrible is going to happen, that we have to react in a certain way, and so it's that's how closely related the human condition is with the soul condition. Is we think it's a human thing. We think that we can change the mindset, but look how long people go through treatment, even for mental health concerns, and they can't break the chain of anxiety. So there's something deeper going on. Now, I have many clients I've worked with for years that really don't have anxious responses anymore, because we've done some of the soul work. We've gotten to that point where we have not only done the intellectual, the psychological kind of retuning, but we've gotten those energetic imprints lifted off in a way that they don't have anxious responses anymore. And that's where this is all related. So that's where the Soul of Psychology series of books that I'm putting out is hopefully going to help people understand how closely related these are. So I want to give a protocol, and I'm going to circle back and tell you how that protocol helps the soul as much as it helps the human condition. So number one, and I know, again, this is the hardest thing to do, but number one, you have to catch the emotion. You have to start observing yourself. You have to become very conscious. This is where conscious evolution comes in. But you have to become conscious of when you get triggered, how you get triggered, and in what circumstances you get triggered, so that you can be a watchdog. You have to be like a spiritual warrior during times of anxiety provoking kinds of events, because you have to keep an eye on what it is that usually triggers you. And you have to be very in tune with that energetic uprising that happens within you when you're having anxiety. So number one is you have to notice, you have to pay attention, you have to notice when one of those anxious responses comes up. Number two, you have to step back from it. Now, this is the challenge of human emotion, is that we say, oh, I don't want to feel like that. I don't want to feel like that. But what happens is then what do? We get ourselves wound up in the emotion. And, if you, again, have read any of my work before, I talk about the fact that human emotion is so useful because there's always a message. There's always some sort of symbolic message embedded in every emotion. So when you think about catching the emotion and stepping back so you can look at it, it gives you the opportunity to really take a look and go, oh, that is what is happening here. So you have to, number one, you have to notice when you're having it. You have to be able to immediately step back rather than lean in to the emotion. And then you have to be able to observe that to go, okay, what is this telling me right now? Number three, then you have to choose an alternative perspective or an alternative action. Now, I'm saying all this now, and I realize that in the moment, it is really hard to choose those alternative actions, which is why if you can get this protocol into your head, you choose the alternative action early for what you're going to do instead of your typical response. And then you implant that so that you react differently. So that third idea, basically that third level or step of this protocol is to choose an alternative action. The fourth one is to implement it, regardless of how uncomfortable it is at the time. Because when we implement something new, it doesn't feel natural, it doesn't feel familiar. And so it actually takes a little more action and energy for us to implement a new behavior or a new response. And so number four is implement whatever that new action is. Number four is after that time passes, then breathe through it, breathe through it, breathe through it. And then you're also observing what you're doing. Now, I'm going to walk through this one more time, and I'm going to explain why it's important to have this and how to create this protocol before you even have another anxiety-related response. So by noticing, by really using conscious evolution, by becoming conscious of that anxious response that you typically have, then you have your thumb on it. You actually have pinned it down to go, okay, there it is. Now what am I going to do? So then that is why you have to step back and observe it, because in many, if not all cases, there's some fear that's involved that's irrational. There's something that is embedded in that emotion that is fear-based. Now, keep in mind that every negatively charged emotion, and I'm not judging emotions, I think emotions are very, very useful. What I'm saying is anything that feels bad. So any negatively charged emotion is always, always, always fear-based. But in 99.9% of the time, it is faulty belief about whatever is going to happen, what we think is going to happen. So it is an irrational kind of response. So only by stepping back and observing that, or observing ourselves in that situation, can we go, oh, wow, okay, I'm going to look at this with curiosity. I'm going to see this is really not a rational response. I'm going to step back. I'm going to breathe through it. I'm going to observe the situation. I'm going to observe myself and realize, okay, wait a minute, I can choose differently. So then by changing that alternative action, and I always try to say, do something that's loving or funny, because those are in direct opposition to those fear-based responses, because there are only two responses, emotions in any, we can winnow down every emotion to two emotions, which is fear or love. And so if you can get away from the fear by creating a loving response or a funny response, I like the funny response personally because it really kind of shoves that fear to the side, then it flips it and it empowers you. It gives you energy. It gives you that idea that, wow, I can kind of do this. I can get out of this rather than getting sucked down the rabbit hole of that negative emotion. That is the point of evolution. That is the point where you are, whew, okay, I can do this. I can move beyond this. I can evolve beyond the old behavior or the old habit or the old pattern. That is the point of that evolution. At that point, what happens is your soul starts to shift. It starts to say, hey, I think I can get past this. And anything that is joy-based, anything that is fun, is always in a higher resonance with the soul, because the soul's most natural state is joy or contentment. It is not natural for the soul to be anxious and to be fearful. So anytime we can step energetically into a joyful or a loving response, we are resonating, we are aligning with our soul's energy, and so things get easier. So it's really important to realize how this all works together. And I know it's very complicated when we have not been taught this, That anytime we respond through a soul-based reaction, we are going to evolve and we're going to feel better. So implementing that new thing, again, that's the part that is part of that new evolution. And when you were able to go, okay, I got through that. I got through that. I did that differently. And we start breathing and we start realizing, wow, we feel different. And you can almost energetically feel yourself tingling. You can feel yourself going, wow, that was really amazing that I got through that. That again is energetically reprogramming your system, reprogramming that energetic negative imprint on your soul to help it release so that you don't do the same thing over and over and over again. So the more you are able to implement and use this protocol, the more and more you kind of smooth out um, that not so good rut of our old behaviors, and you're able to change it and go into a loving or a fun kind of response. And then basically you can laugh at yourself, and that's all the better in the long run. So I'm going to say this one more time. This protocol is really important, and it's vital and essential for you to think through it before you have your next anxious response so that you have it already in a plan for what you're going to do. So number one, you notice, oh, I think I'm about to get anxious. I think I may be having a panic attack. Okay, instead of letting yourself go down and get bungee corded into that emotion, breathe, step back, observe the situation, observe yourself so that you can get a little bit emotionally detached from the situation. Third, choose whatever intervention you can use. Now, again, you may have to have a couple ready just in case you can't use one in all circumstances. So, for instance, you can't sing or dance out loud in the middle of a crowd. You could, but you might have to have something else that you do internally. So, find your joyful or your funny response and use that. Number four, then you basically you implement it. You actually put that into action. You watch the energetic difference of what it feels like to implement your new behavior, your new reaction, your new pattern. And then once you get past that discomfort, then step back, breathe in, let the rest of the discomfort move away, and also just enjoy that new energetic presence of what happens for you when you've overcome that situation. Now, I am fully aware that it takes practice and it takes time to get to a place where you can do this automatically. But if you don't have a protocol, if you don't have an idea of how you're going to handle this in the moment that the human condition is trying to put you in a headlock, then basically what you need to do is practice figuring out what this protocol is so that you can get there. I can guarantee you this will work, and I can also guarantee you that the more you work on the human condition aspect of this, the more you evolve beyond, and I'm going to emphasize that, the more you evolve beyond your old patterns so that your soul can be freed to go be happier, go be lighter, go do whatever it's supposed to do. Because those fearful responses hold us back. It holds us back from our evolution. And our soul wants to grow. Our soul wants to be free. Our soul wants to keep moving forward. But if we don't work on our human condition, we don't get there. So we have to realize that we have to do the psychological work, but simultaneously, as we do that, if we tune into the energetic aspect of this, it shifts into a whole new action and you lighten up. You feel better. And I can tell you this stuff works. I've done it for myself. I do it with people every day, but it's super important to understand that by taking hold of the human condition, we do work for our soul's benefit. So I hope this protocol was helpful for you. There are many more tips that are going to be coming, but I thought it was important and appropriate to take action now about anxiety because it is the number one mental health concern in the world. And it is also the fastest growing mental health concern in the world. So we've got to do something to stop it. And we also have to realize how the soul is involved with this. So thanks for listening. Light and love to all of you. And I will be back soon with more information. Bye-bye.